Hello and welcome to the 15-minute show, part of the Arsenal Therapy podcast. As always, we will be broadcasting twice a week, so make sure to hit the like and subscribe button and, of course, turn on your notifications. We'll be discussing all Arsenal-related news with a key focus on transfers during the summer window. I'm Adam Keys and I'm your host. Today we're joined by Farhan, who's also known as Gunner since '96 and the main man and brains behind the Arsenal Therapy pod. So, welcome to the show, Farhan. Thanks for joining.
Very good morning to you, Adam. Thank you for having me. After you guys topped such an incredible performance on Tuesday, I'm not going to lie to you, I was a bit nervous. Don't know how I'm going to perform, but yeah, it's good to be here.
Yeah, it's our we had, for those wondering what he's talking about, we had our record numbers on the show on Tuesday. So thanks to everyone that tuned in. And as always, please keep coming back for more Arsenal news. So first up, we're going to start with some quick fire questions as always. So Farhan, are you ready?
Let's do it.
So does Patino have a future at Arsenal?
No,
Will Timber be a starter?
no.
And was giving Reece Nelson a new contract a wise move?
Yes.
Okay, that's three fairly firm answers. I like it. I like it a lot. So first up, obviously the Declan Rice story is kind of stolen all the headlines this season. We announced a £67 million transfer in Kai Havertz, which at this point is still our second highest transfer. And it just kind of went under the radar, which shows what crazy times we're living in. That even when the transfer was being announced, people were still shouting about Declan Rice. So the same has kind of happened with Jurriën Timber in that his deal, we got another Orn bomb yesterday, our second in 12 hours, that basically said everything was done. It was just a case of arranging the medical for Jurriën Timber. So how do you feel about that? It's obviously great to have essentially three signings in the bag already at this point, but what are your gut feelings now that Timber looks like it's pretty much done?
Well, I think we've known for a while that it was done, and strangely enough, this is one of those transfers where I think the majority of us expected it to be done, despite the lack of the amount of media coverage that it got. By that, I mean, in comparison to, let's say, the Rice dealing or even the Havertz dealing, I think this deal happened quite quickly. It picked up a lot of speed when the initial reports came out, and it's nice to see. Well, I don't know what end of the stick you want to grab, but for me personally, it's good to see that there's no one else in there for him. It removes that complication. Was there anyone else in for him?
There were talks that Bayern Munich went in,
Yeah,
so they basically have a very clear strategy this summer. In case you haven't realised, it was go for whoever Arsenal go for.
yeah,
So it started with Declan Rice, Kai Havertz, and then Timber. So what I've read about Timber, he made it very clear that Arsenal was the only place he wanted to go to, and it made negotiations very straightforward. So the fee that's being reported is a 34 to 36 million base fee and around 4 million in add-ons. So this deal is worth a total of around 40 million pounds if all the add-ons are hit. Which last summer he was being touted to go to Man United for a lot more money. So fee-wise, how do you feel about this?
yeah. I'm happy. 22-year-old. I mean, I'm gonna assume he's gonna sign a long-term deal. 5 year plus, and to be coming in to initially obviously play as an optional centre back or an auxiliary type of player who can play across the back line. It's a very very good deal for Arsenal. It's something. It's a typical Arteta type of signing, looking for the future, versatile type of player, exciting, very energetic. I mean, Arteta he doesn't go for players that play at a low intensity. And I think a podcast that was recorded by Brazilian media outlet on with Gabriel Jesus, who made it very abundantly clear that Arteta expects a lot from them. The intensity levels in training and in games are right up here. So yeah, anyone that Arteta signs at the moment, you can't say anything less other than very very exciting and very very positive. Um,
Absolutely.
and I think that the conversation now has to sway to the other side of the argument, which is great that we're buying all play, making really shrewd and exciting acquisitions, but now we need to look at offloading, balancing those books, because a lot of media outlets reporting the amount of money that Arsenal is spending, completely ignoring what others are doing down the road. But yeah, almost 700 mil in signings for Arteta, 25 players, I think.
So
So,
it was 595 once
okay.
Rice is complete for 25 players. However, as I pointed out on Twitter yesterday, our neighbours down the road, Chelsea, spent 600 million in 6 months. So when you put that into context, it's still a relatively low spend
Mm,
by comparison. Obviously, it's still an astronomical amount of money, but in
yeah.
comparison to Chelsea. But one of the things that I noticed about Timber and the three players that we brought in this summer is their injury records. So this is something I talk about a lot, and you can't influence a game on the treatment table. We've had so many players where our hopes and dreams have been pinned on their return from injury. Van Persie, Eduardo, Diaby, all those players through the years. But I had a look at Havertz, Rice, and Timber's injury records. Havertz has missed just 12 games through injury in his entire career, and he's been playing since he was 17, playing a lot of games every season. Declan Rice has missed 0 games through injury, and then Jurriën Timber has missed 7 games in 3 years, and they've mainly all been contact injuries, which contact injury, getting a whack on the ankle, missing a game with a bit of swelling or whatever it is, that's the kind of injury you want as a football club, because it's a quick heal. There's no muscular damage, no ligament damage, any of those things that lead to knock-on effects. So it's clear Arteta's target and availability as well as intensity. And the other key thing is, if you're picking up repeated injury problems, there's a recovery process to get back. So just to get back to your level, it takes a lot of work. To get back to the level of intensity Arteta wants, whole different ball game. So it's clear that's a factor in the players that we're bringing in. But some of the other interesting things about Timber is last season he led all players in the Eredivisie for successful passes with 2,500, successful forward passes 731, passing accuracy with 91.7%, progressive carries with 487, and carry progress of over 5,000 meters, which pretty impressive stats. And then on top of that, he played more passes into the final third than any other centre back in Europe's top 7 leagues, and that was 399 passes. When you're pairing him with the the players that we've already got, so last season, Martin Odegaard played more progressive passes than any other player in the Premier League. Ben White was in the top 10. Declan Rice was in the top 10. Rice had the most carries in the league, which again, you're bringing 2 players in that are ball carriers. Very interesting that a centre back has ball carrying numbers like that. But how do you see Timber fitting in with these numbers and from what you've seen of him so far?
Yeah, with some of the compilation clips that are going around, one of the immediate things that I noticed was the ball carrying and also progressive passes that he was making. Very brave on the ball, I have to say. And I very much like a player. Some people might feel a little bit differently about a centre back being so progressive, having the initiative to take the ball forward. We know who was it? Couple last season, Ben White had a few occasions where he would overcommit himself and then land himself into a bit of trouble. But if you look at some of the issues that we had at the back end of last season, it was very much but having the bravery to play it forward. And actually, in Arteta's system, we're very much playing in between the lines. It's a few seasons back when he first came in, the biggest frustration for us was playing it from one side of the pitch to the other, and now it's trying to get it into the final third as quickly as possible. So with someone like him coming in, who knows? Arteta might do the unthinkable and play him as a an advanced centre back, or the modern day defensive midfielder. He definitely has the qualities to play in that kind of position. But I guess time will tell what Arteta has up his sleeve. The boys are back at Colney. They're going to be working on a lot. I think Timber will be joining them, in the coming week or so. And the stats that you just provided us with are, paint a very clear story of what's to come.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just on that point of the boys coming back, one of the biggest things that I noticed, of course, and I think every Arsenal fan couldn't help but notice, was the presence of William Saliba in training. Um, just how good is it to see that player back in an Arsenal shirt and clearly doing some contact stuff as well around pads and so on.
Yeah, the single player that stuck out for me in those little clips was William Saliba. I mean, he has this really strange kind of aura, and it's quite incredible and unbelievable that he's only 21 years old.
22 now.
Right,
So
22
yeah,
years old. He's
so he's still a
incredibly young.
boy.
Yeah, he is. But he looks like he could pass for 27, 28. And he's had that kind of presence about him his whole life. So it will be on one hand, it will be a bit of a concern for Timber to come in and to challenge Gabriel and Saliba, but on the other hand, it'll be great for all of them because I'm hoping all of their performances will be elevated by that level of competitiveness. But yeah, certainly the goal next season will be to try and keep him fit and to manage his game time as well as Bukayo Saka's game time as much as possible.
Yeah, and I do think a big part of that again, the injuries seemed to come from the Fulham game where he landed quite awkwardly on his back when him and Ramsdale collided, and hopefully if it's fully fit, because again it was a back injury that seemed to be as a result of impact because they couldn't give a time frame and so on. But that injury was the biggest part of our season last year. I don't think anyone had as big of an impact on us. So it's great to see him back. And I think with Timber there, we have a defender that's able to step up and play the high line, because that was the biggest loss. When Kivior came in, he did quite well, but he was thrown in when things had already taken a very bad turn. So just to move on to Flo Balogun. So this is a player that's obviously got a huge amount of attention this year, and he's talked in the media, obviously with his big move to the US national team, which I really don't have a problem with. And I think there's been too much made of Balogun being outspoken. I think he's been willed out for media duty with the States. It's only natural that they would ask him about Arsenal. I think he's been respectful. I think there's a bit too much made about him retweeting one message and not another. And for me, I think Balogun has never said anything that isn't fair. He backs himself and he wants to play, basically. And if he gets that at Arsenal, great. But so there's 5 clubs that have been linked to him. So we're seeing both Milan clubs, AC and Inter, Marseille, Monaco, Leipzig. There were also some links to Premier League clubs through the week. West Ham have been linked. I believe Brighton were thrown in there as well. Where do you think would be the best move for Flo Balogun at this time?
I think the best move for Balogun would be to stay at Arsenal if you're asking me personally. And I know that's a very selfish answer because he's not going to get as much game time as he will do elsewhere. But if we want to take our individual case studies of why it when it works, look at Reece Nelson. Balogun's incredibly young. Like he's still got a few seasons before, but I guess the most important thing right now is to take advantage of the momentum that he has and to not try and stunt his progression. Because when young players have that kind of the period in their career where they're going upwards, it's really important for them to take advantage of that. by double downing on game time and make sure that they're performing on a, I guess, consistent basis. So I think if you're someone who is like Balogun, who wants to, incredibly ambitious and who wants to achieve the highest in this sport, you'd want to stay in the Premier League.
Yeah,
So
and that,
you'd be looking at. So, I mean, personally, I'd be looking at someone like the club that would suit him perfectly to a T. Looks like a team like Villa, not Villa, sorry, Crystal Palace, um, because there's
yeah.
so much dynamism and youthness and also pace around him.
And I think as well, if a move to somewhere like Brighton came up with
Yeah.
their development plans, Deserby obviously being a tactical genius, and just the whole nature of nurture that Brighton have created, that to me would be the perfect environment. So it'll be an interesting one. The reports are that no one's met or bid close to Arsenal's 50 million valuation.
Mm.
I would imagine that we haven't actually received any bids yet. And this could be someone that is a phase two, as Harry Simu put it on the pod, uh, kind of seal for us, where the intensity around this builds up a bit over the next few weeks. And so, just to move on from Balogun, there's been a couple of new contracts that one signed and one expected to be signed this week. Obviously, Saliba, who we've discussed, but Reece Nelson, Romano said yesterday, had signed his new Arsenal contract. There are still talks that Arsenal will sign another winger this window, and that's something I still think we kind of need, even with Nelson in the team. But just give me your thoughts. Firstly, you said that we were right to give Nelson a new contract. And secondly, do you think that we will sign another winger?
Yeah, we were absolutely right to sign Nelson on a new deal because of the performances that he put in last season. Proofs in the pudding, and he proved to us that he's good enough. One of the brightest players that came off the bench, and I think deserved a lot more game time than he got. And so this is his reward, and this should be a he should be used as an example to all the young players at Arsenal, all the frustrated ones, players like Eddie Nketiah, different kind of player, different story in itself. But Reece Nelson should be used as an example for players who are coming up the academy, players like Charlie Patino, who are, dabbling with their careers and weighing up the pros and cons of staying at Arsenal. But certainly looking forward to the next season, if we're looking at trying to balance the books and use our finances responsibly, you'd want to keep someone like Reece Nelson rather than signing a winger who could cost up to 30 to 40 mil. And in this market anyway, if you're going to offload someone like Reece Nelson, I reckon he would go for about 30 to 40 mil. I wouldn't be happy to let him go with his age profile and the performances that he put in last season, and also just his ability on the ball. It's very rare to find a confident player who goes through as many trials and tribulations as Nelson went through and bounced back the way that he did. You think back to Nicola Pepe, the signing we made for 72 mil. It didn't take very long for his confidence to be knocked down. We didn't really ever see him recover. So Nelson went away, did what he needed to do, worked hard on the training ground, listened to the coaches, and took Arteta's advice on board. And now, he's seen the fruits of his labor.
Absolutely. And so, just finally to wrap up, you said about you almost hinted there not signing a winger in favor of keeping Nelson. So, do you believe that we don't need an additional winger with Nelson coming in?
It's difficult to tell if we're going to go by the Harry's theory of the different stages. Then we know that Arsenal won't be making a signing for a while now until they offload the number of players. Maybe at the end of the season, at the end of the window, sorry, when there's an opportunity that arises, we can take advantage of it. At the moment, I think the squad with those three additional signings, I think the squad is really nicely balanced. But
Yeah, same here.
that's because we have a number of players who are yet to leave. So if we're looking at empty gaps in the squad, bless you.
Oh, cheers.
We're looking at a winger. We're looking at potentially a striker as well, and we're looking at potentially another midfielder. Everything else has been sorted, so I'm not too concerned about wingers and adding depth into those areas. I think with the amount of interchangeability that we've got in the squad, we can just move players in and around to kind of suit our needs.
Yeah. Personally, I would still like to see another stretcher in the team. I think Nelson can do that a bit. But I completely agree. That's been something I've been saying a long time as well, that I did believe we'd get the three in, then sell. And then once Arteta's had a look at everyone in pre-season, find out exactly what he needs. Because every year there's someone that comes back a bit fresher, steps up, and has learned from the year before. So we will wrap up the show at that point. As always, we've gone a little over the 15 minutes, but I would just like to say thank you for joining today, Farhan. It's been great to have you as always. So you can find Farhan on Twitter at GunnerSince96. You can find us at the Arsenal Therapy Pod, and make sure you tune in again on Tuesday for the show where we'll be bringing you all the latest Arsenal news. And of course, we will be bringing you the main pod, which will come out on Saturday. And now, again, we've got a very special guest that will be here to offer some great insight into Arsenal. So thanks again for joining, and make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Thanks, guys.